In this unit, we're going to focus on application security in the cloud. So the cloud, in many cases, we're using the cloud to host our applications. That's the end game here, right? So, when we look at a layered architecture in computing in general, usually we talk about a computer as a series of components such as application software, system software, the hardware, and we can look at it, data centers and operations in sort of the same way, but on a larger scale. And we've talked about in this course the hardware and the environment. We've also talked about the operating system in that management plane that we discussed in the previous unit. And now we're going to concentrate more on the application side, so the applications that we actually use and install in the cloud, and some of the security concerns that might be special to the cloud or of special importance to us in reference to the cloud. So our objectives here in this unit are going to be to talk about what's needed when considering application deployment in the cloud or in a cloud environment, some of the common pitfalls with a cloud environment for applications, the security and functional testing of applications within the cloud, software development lifecycle and how it relates to a cloud project, some of the special considerations there, specific risks and threat models when we look at the cloud and deploying to the cloud for applications, supplemental security devices that we can use in the cloud, federated identity systems, which identification in the cloud is a little bit different than in our own internal network. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Single sign-on, multi-factor authentication. So first, our introduction here, we talk about data sensitivity, which we want to try to make sure we understand data sensitivity and understand data sensitivity when we move it to the cloud and consider the data, the functions, and the processes that we're moving to the cloud. So determining data sensitivity is important because we want to determine what would be the impact if the data suddenly became widely public or widely distributed, including crossing geographic boundaries, which could happen. Our data in the cloud is already global in that sense. So if it gets compromised, with the cloud, it could be easily compromised through some of the techniques we're going to talk about. So it's important to consider that. What if an employee of a cloud service provider accessed the application? And how can we mitigate that threat? So all of these applications that we deploy to the cloud, obviously the cloud service provider has access to everything that's in their environment. So what can we do to assure that we take reasonable steps to make sure that our applications are secure running in the cloud? The processor function, what if it's manipulated by an outsider, if somebody's able to gain access to it through some of the techniques we talked about previously? What if a processor function fails to provide the expected results, either because it's in the cloud or through some vulnerability because of the cloud? And we'll talk about some of that. What if it was unexpectedly changed or an application is unavailable for some period of time because it's in the cloud? Again, it's not in our local data centers. It's located in the cloud, so it's important to be aware of that and what those ramifications are going to be if we don't have availability to that data. So all of this stuff that we've talked about so far in this course, we're now specifically asking ourselves questions about the applications and some of the ramifications if any of this stuff goes wrong, if we lose access to our data, access to our business processes hosted in the cloud, or if that data is compromised or distributed and so forth. All things that we worry about in the cloud more so than we do in our own data centers because of the nature of the cloud.